Hello and welcome to another edition of What's Happening. I'm Elliot Margolis. I'm here with my colleagues Gail Burke and George Binns, and we're going to have a nice discussion today about a few different topics. But before we get into that, I want to say Happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas, Happy Kwanzaa, no happy holidays, because I am not politically correct. Don't want to be, and you know what? It's the Christmas season. If somebody's offended by you saying Merry Christmas to them, that's their problem and not your problem. Now getting to the issues of the day. My first issue today is December 2nd, and there was a mass shooting in San Bernardino, California. 14 people have been killed. We've had a number of mass shootings over the past few months. And every time there's a mass shooting, the liberals come out and say, well, it's time to have better gun control. Look at Chicago. Toughest gun control laws in the country, and they have 10, 15, 20 murders a weekend with tough gun control. Look at Baltimore. Same thing. St. Louis. Same thing. Gun control is not the issue. You know what I think one of the issues are, and this is what I want to bring up to you two? Gun-free zones. Is a gun-free zone a zone that says to people who want to come in and commit crimes, gee, I can't go in there, I can't bring my gun? Or are they going to say, gee, gun-free zone, I can get in there and get out of there and make it worth my while? I open up the discussion with the two of you on that thought.
Well, if you want to get into the issue today, one of the comments that was made is that there was somebody in San Diego, a gentleman, had a gun. And I would assume it's a handgun, pistol of some sort. And when the shooting started, he backed off, but he saw one of the perpetrators pull away in a car. There's no neat answer to it because the guy who left was carrying a long gun. Don't know whether it's an assault rifle or what, but it's probably an AK-47 or some variation on it. At close range, a pistol is extremely effective, but you get more than 20, 50 feet away, and unless you're an extremely good shot, all you're going to do is scare the living daylights out of them if at best. I know I had experience in the military. We were playing one night with the troops, and we had some 45s out there, and a lot of us would have a hard time hitting a 6-foot target with a 45 at something more than, 30, 40 feet. So, again, it's not a neat panacea. Yeah, it's nice to have a handgun. You get in close, and a lot of these incidents, if he was inside and somebody tried to come through the door with a long gun, I'll take a pistol any day. But once you get outside, you're out of your league.
Well, I think the easy answer is to say we need more gun laws. We need gun control. We have thousands of gun laws, and some of them are not being observed. But I think to add more to them solves absolutely nothing. I think some of the time it's a mental health issue with some of these people that are going into places and shooting places up. Sometimes they're just bad people. Bad people always can get guns.
Well, the other part of the game, too, is that you don't need a gun necessarily.
It's true.
We got a trial going on in, I guess it's Salem right now, where a young boy killed his teacher.
Yeah.
He's already confessed to it with a box cutter.
Yeah.
You were mentioning before the show started that there's all sorts of stabbings going on in Israel. And it doesn't necessarily take a gun to kill somebody. It just takes somebody with a bad attitude. At least that's...
Well, you talk about gun-free zones. That's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous to have gun-free zones. Remember the case, I think it was in Texas? It was a military base where the military people were not allowed to protect themselves.
Same thing in Washington, D.C. at the naval base.
Yeah.
Here you got people trained to have guns,
Right.
and they're not allowed to have guns. it's easy to go in there and take care of that. The other problem that I see with this, and I don't know if you agree or disagree, but I'm usually right, so you'll probably agree, is that the press is a real problem here. You turn on the news tonight, and you're going to see hours and hours of talking about what happened in San Bernardino. Okay? And they're going to repeat themselves time after time after time. And sometimes in some of these other cases, they talk about the perpetrator, the person who commits the crime. They give them the publicity that they really want. Perhaps we shouldn't have the press be doing so much of that. There's other news. Okay, there's 14 people that were killed in San Bernardino, and we understand that. Investigation is going on. Move on to the next item and have your regular TV shows on instead of if these guys get away, they're going to be sitting watching TV saying, boy, we did good.
Well, you know,
What are we going to do the next time?
the problem
top
too with
this?
the press is they start offering opinions. They have no idea what they're talking about, but they are, well, maybe this happened, maybe that happened, and some people take that as, you know, this is what happened. And then, of course, how long does it take for the president to get on board? He jumps into the arena and starts talking about gun control.
Right.
He doesn't talk about the families and how terrible it is for the families of the people who were killed. He wants to talk about politics.
And with all due respect to lawyers, and I don't have any respect for lawyers, so let's get that straight right now. When they catch these guys and they go to trial, they try and figure out, let's see, well, you know, he had a tough childhood,
Yeah.
so this is why he did it. So you got to cut him a little slack. No, he shouldn't get the death penalty for killing 14 people. He should probably have a psychiatric exam. And if he's not competent to stand trial, put him in, you know, someplace where he can get better. You know, here's the reality. He killed people. Okay? I don't care why he did it.
Yeah.
Because he's wrong. And we need these people off the street.
You know, the other part of the problem that bothers me is that, like a lot of incidents, we're going to get inundated with views of San Bernardino for about 2 days,
Yeah.
and that's all we'll ever see. And maybe we'll get another splash on the TV if they finally catch up with these characters. But what I would really like to know is, okay, after you've got them and you know all the details, how did they get the guns? Where did they get them from? What was their motive? Why were they doing this? I don't care about his childhood. I want to know what was going on. Because if we don't understand what happened and why it happened, how do we fix it? And somebody comes up, well, we need another gun law. Well, we've got gun laws coming out of our ears. And we still have a number of incidents over and over again. And to the point you were making about Chicago is, you go into the international statistics and the murder rate by gun in the United States is a big number. But if you take out of the total the shootings in Chicago, I think it's St. Louis, New York, Washington, D.C., and I think L.A., all of a sudden we're down at the bottom of the list. So the problem is focused in just 2 or 3 big cities, maybe half a dozen big cities. And the point you were making is Chicago has got some of the toughest gun laws around. Washington, D.C.'s got extremely tough gun laws. And the places that have the worst problem are not solving it with gun laws. So if that doesn't work, what else is causing the problem? And that's what we need to fix.
We could do the whole show on this, but we got to move on to the
gotta
next
move on.
item. So go ahead, George. What's your topic of the day?
Well, kind of equally morbid. There's been a lot of talk around about the refugees, the migrants, and the problems. And what I see happening is that we've got 2 different classes, the conservatives and the liberals, talking over each other's head or past each other. They're both making true statements, but they're incomplete statements. The liberals, and if you saw Bill O'Reilly the other night, he got all wound up over the editorial that was in the New York Times, where they're essentially saying that we ought to have immigration laws that allows everybody in, and when they get here, we're going to take care of them until they can take care of themselves, which sounds, hey, that's really generous kind of thing. But at the same time, the conservatives are saying that, well, we have to be careful who we allow in here. And Donald Trump, I've mentioned it before, he's an interesting character, but he came up and he specifically stated he wants to put a wall fence across the southern border. He wants to get Mexico to pay for it. That's nice. And he wants to stop the illegals and the murderers and criminal element from coming across the border. That's perfectly rational. Whether he can get Mexico to pay for it or not, could be a challenge. But
He's Donald Trump. Maybe he can.
But at least it's a rational position. And yet, as soon as he says something like that, oh, he's anti-Hispanic. They start putting the labels on him. And I think this converts the discussion from one of, what are we going to do about a real problem? Unfortunately, Paris learned the hard way that, hey, some of these people that come across the border, and they even stay a while, and they're even born here, they become under the influence of some really nasty people. ISIS, Al-Qaeda, the Taliban, you can pick any one of them. There's a whole bunch of them out there. And at the same time, we're not catching up with them in time to prevent something from happening.
Well, you know, what the liberals do, you brought this up kind of nicely when you talked about Trump saying something and then everybody calls him anti-Hispanic.
Yeah.
Well, what about with the abortions? If you're in favor, if you're opposed to abortion, that means you're anti-woman.
Yeah.
And so there's a war on women. Republicans hate women. Well, I got news for you. Half the people who are Republicans are women. Yeah. Do they hate themselves? I mean, the reality is, from my perspective, with abortion, a woman has a right to do what she wants with her body. When she's pregnant, it's not her body. She's sharing that body with somebody else. And now the question is, does she have a right to do something to that other human being that's in the body? But instead, the liberals will say, well, you know, anti-woman. I find that when I go on Facebook, I have some liberal friends on Facebook. When I ask certain questions or when they're talking about something and I get specific, they change the subject because they can't answer the question. They change the topic.
They don't have the ability to argue with you and make sense. So therefore, they either call you names or they turn around and pretend that you didn't say anything and change the subject. Now, I'm a woman. I wouldn't be sitting here.
Thank you for telling us.
You're very welcome. I wouldn't be sitting here with you two guys if I thought you hated me. Yeah. And I know that you're both conservatives, so that blows that theory.
Well, the other part of this problem with the migrants and the threat of ISIS or some other group is it's considered to be a very spectacular incident. And there's an article that showed up in the Wall Street Journal a while back, and they had a link to it. And before I get to that particular one, another email that I get pointed out that last year, 2014, there were 13,370 terrorist incidents in the world. And of that, 32,658 people were killed. A lot more maimed, injured, and so forth. And it started to be, well, that's a big problem. Well, if that's a big problem, the other half of the game that comes up is, what else is going on? And if I lose it again, I'll wing it. Okay. There is 30,000 people killed in the United States, rough numbers, every year with guns. That sounds pretty bad. What sounds really horrible about it is 20,000 of those people, it's self-inflicted. They're suicide attempts. You look at the statistics on incidents in a hospital, and depending upon whose number you're looking at, there's 100 to 108,000 people that die in a hospital because of a medical mistake. And if
I
we're
think
gonna-
we should fire all the doctors.
Well, if you start to look at some of these other problems that are out there, and nobody is addressing them until there's a spectacular incident. So the focus is really wrong. I mean, this could be so much done if we could figure out why people are so depressed and want to get a gun and shoot themselves. That's 20,000 lives a year.
But
And
you were
keep-
talking about the immigrants and the refugees coming here. Now, Angela Merkel in Germany invited them in. She invited 200,000 of them in. And what's happening now? They're coming into Germany, they're taking the jobs. The German government has to provide them with housing, with food, with medical care. And now the German people are up in arms saying, we can't afford this. What are we going to do? And we don't know who these people are. That's the big problem. We don't know who they are. Are all Muslims peaceful? I don't think so.
Some are.
Some are, some aren't.
But-
The problem is there's no way to vet the people that are pouring into all these countries. There's no way to vet them.
Another thing that, George, when you were talking about these gun shootings and stuff, say 30,000 people get killed and there's so many that are suicide. What about the 45,000 people killed every single year on our highways
Oh, yeah.
from drunk drivers? So here's the solution. Take away cars. Because if you take away all the cars, nobody's going to get caught drunk driving.
Oh, Google.
That's the same relationship as getting rid of guns.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, the logic is the same, and it falls apart.
yeah.
But the other half of the thing is, you just got to wait till Google gets their automatic car going, and then you won't have any drunk driving. The other one I got a kick out of the other day, they were talking about these automatic cars. One of them got pulled over because it was traveling too slow, because the car was only obeying the speed limit.
All right, time for
Time
Gales.
for me.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to totally change the subject, and I'm going to talk about Common Core and some of the things that have been happening. One particular thing that happened, and this came out in an editorial in the Salem News this past week, and it had to do with some parents in Byfield and their concern about data collection by the schools. Now, we know under Common Core that's what's happening. They're collecting data, personal data. Of course, the parents knew nothing about this, but it was a 32-page survey, questionnaire, developed by, of all people, the Harvard Graduate School of Education, called Making Caring Common, was the name of the survey. And it was distributed to middle school children and to high school children. It was intended to help schools strategize and process how to change school culture regarding bullying and to develop, quote, students' social, emotional, and ethical strengths. Now, that sounds kind of interesting, but if you're a parent of one of these children and you know nothing about this and your child comes home and starts talking about this survey, it makes you wonder, okay, what are they doing and what kind of questions are they asking these kids? Here are a couple of the questions. How important is it for your parents to be around people of other races? What groups of people do your parents talk about the mistreatment of? How fair is it that some people and families in this country have large amounts of money while other people and families have very little money? Is that fair? How fair do your parents think it is that some people have a lot of money and some don't? Do your parents do anything to help people with less money? And it goes on and on and on about parents. Now, I was kind of concerned about this. And I thought, you know, there's got to be more to it than that. So I did some research. And I found out that in 2010, the New York Times, there was an article about a program that they have, and I believe they probably still have it, questions about issues in the news for students 13 years old and older. And they publish a student opinion question, and teenagers and young adults write in with their thoughts. And they gave a list of all the questions. I picked out some of them. And the thing about the questions are, some of them are very bland and, you know, like, what is your favorite music? And the students can take that and write in about it. However, then it goes on, and in between these innocent-sounding questions are some very disturbing questions, like, how much food does your family waste? What would you ask President Obama? Do you judge political candidates by their looks? Do you support or oppose the death penalty? Now, these are 13-year-old kids. How do your parents teach you to behave? What do you think of the Tea Party? Let's see. What do you want your obituary to say? How overprotective are your parents? Is America a great country? And it goes on and on and on. And the disturbing thing was, after I read this thing about the schools in Byfield, I was reading this, and it says that this has been adopted by teachers in different parts of the country. One of them, I want to thank you for the Learning Network. That's who publishes, that's the section of the New York Times that publishes these. I use the student opinion question as a daily warm-up for my 11th grade students. Even though the questions are not directly related to the subject I teach, American history, they are engaging and thought-provoking and help me wake up my students at the beginning of class. We spend time discussing the questions, and at the end of the week, I collect their written papers. This has allowed me to get to know my students' personalities better. Okay.
A couple of things that bother me there is, you talk about she's a history teacher, and then they ask a question, do you think it's fair that some people make more money than others? Well, if you're a history teacher, you find out that what made America great is allowing people to work hard, earn a living, hire people, create things, and, you know, provide jobs for other people. The reason why we've been as successful as we are as a nation, and allegedly the richest nation in the world, is because of our economic system.
You know that.
But what I'm saying is, this is what the history teacher should be getting out of this, and saying to their students, yes, it's okay that somebody makes more money than somebody else because they worked harder.
But you know that that's not part of this agenda, because we have done interviews with the superintendent and the assistant superintendent right here on this show, and I asked them about how they teach global warming. Do you also teach global cooling? And I got no response.
Right.
So that's what Common Core does. They have a particular agenda, and they're collecting.
It will be on the ballot.
It will be on the ballot in November.
They got enough signatures to make it.
Oh, they did?
Yep, they did get enough signatures to get it on the ballot, so that'll be nice. But you know what's interesting, again, is the fact that years ago, 30, 40, 50 years ago, the U.S. was one of the smartest nations in the world school-wise. Once the liberals took over the school system, we've gone downhill.
Yep.
And it's not a coincidence that we're now 30th in math and 20th in history and things like that. We've gone down because of the liberal education.
Well, the thing that bothers me about these kinds of polls, surveys, whatever you want to call them, They are collecting personal data from the children, and the children don't know. They don't understand what it's all about. But these parents out in Byfield recognized what was happening.
Good for them.
And when they approached the superintendent, at first they denied it. And then they said, well, yes, we shouldn't have done that. So we're now going to take this data and we're going to destroy it. Are they really going to destroy it? Or how do you know?
I don't know, but we don't have much time left. George, you got to get in there and say something.
Well, the problem, I don't think it's so much that the liberals took over the education system. They always controlled the education system. You think of what Harvard was when it was invented, discovered, created. And the whole philosophy of what do you teach as an education was a liberal education. Where I think the country fell down is that as more and more emphasis was required on STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, we didn't get into the game quick enough and deeply enough to start to catch up with these countries that had a head start on us. And that, I think, is where the problem is, that you look at the way they're teaching math and science in some of these other countries that are doing well, and I don't necessarily agree with it, but they have a lot more rigor to it, and they have a lot more what I call subject-specific teachers that are doing the teaching, so that when a kid asks a question, they get an answer from somebody who really knows the subject, as opposed to that's what's in the book. And
But I don't think they even use books that much now, George. Now it's from the internet. And you know, if you go on the internet, you can get all kinds of opinions. But the opinions, and particularly in the colleges now, they don't want differing opinions from what the professors are telling them. So this so-called liberal education, which used to mean that you got an opinion here, here, all different opinions, so that you could make your own, come up with your own opinion. Now it's one way. It's a liberal opinion, and if you don't agree with it, you're out of here. You get bad marks. They don't want to listen to you. So these kids are not even getting a decent education.
One of the great things about charter schools is that charter schools are designed so that kids get disciplined in school.
Well, that was before Common Core came into the charter schools, and it's in there now, and they are changing as well. And that is a shame. It is really a shame, because they were an alternative to the standard public schools.
Well, and not only that, but there's a reason why there's such a waiting list for people going into charter schools.
Yep.
Because parents want their kids to get educated, and they recognize that what's going on in the public schools now is not good.
That's right.
And you have to maintain certain standards if you're in a charter school.
I'm going to have to cut you off there, because
You loved it.
I think our time is just about up, but this has been a great conversation, and we really have to concentrate on doing more of these, because I think that it's valuable for us to give information to our audience, and I think that, you know, I certainly get a lot out of it, and I'm sure you two do as well.
I think the one more message we still have to keep publishing is that we've got an 8-sided table here. There's room for other people, and if somebody in the audience has a different opinion, you're welcome. We just put another chair up here, and you're part of the story.
I invited Brian Watson, your nemesis, to come on the show, and he refuses. So
We've had lots of refusals.
here's
liberals
an open invitation to you, Brian. If you want to come on the show, get in touch with us.
Liberals don't want to be on the show.
Just remember, we are the closest thing to Fox News Light.
Thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Good night, everybody.